Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. It's been said before that many things that we try to do, make changes, move our life forward, usually fail. It's a reality. Hate to say it, but it is what it is unless there's a play, a book, a plan. And this gentleman has come up with what's known as the OpenPlaybook as he coaches executives, individuals to really changing their lives and moving their lives forward. Now, I love the title of what he's got, Open Playbook, because it's open. He shares with you everything. In fact, the third playbook is all about sharing what you know with others to move your life forward, and of course, somebody else's. But all this is for naught unless you have somebody walking that journey with you. You can go online, you can find a lot of stuff and think you're the smartest person in the room. But unless you've got somebody with that accountability helping you move forward, you're probably not going to go where you want to go. So let's dig into that today, the coaching aspect of the Open Playbook. And Larry Dodd is back with us. How are you doing today?
Hey, Steve, I'm doing great out here in San Francisco on business, and always nice to get off from the East Coast to the West Coast. It's like coming home. And so anyways, we're excited to be here. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to out you on that right now. You're there because you have business there, but you have a speaking engagement. I think it was Reno coming up. Ninth year, they've called you back because this is what you do. People want to hear what you have to say to move their lives forward, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. This is the REST 25 conference, and it's our subject matter this time is succession planning, which a lot of companies struggle with, and a lot of us individually struggle with. And so this is all about how do you use Open Playbook, how do you use a strategy so that you are able to build an organization and a lifestyle, family, whatever, where your succession is natural, where it happens naturally, where it happens as a matter of course. That doesn't happen by accident, right? You create a culture that promotes that. So that's all about what we're doing up in Reno, at least on my end of it.
Before we dig into the coaching aspect of what you offer, I want to just touch upon the succession aspect. Are you saying that when we create something, that we should always have it in mind who will be the successor, that we know maybe energetically or the mindset that this is going to be successful, and at some point it's the torch is going to be passed on?
I would agree with that, but I would think about it just a little bit differently, and that we should always be waiting and working through the playbooks, right, and through our relationship building to see a successor emerge, right? So we may not know who that successor is to start with, but what we do is we create an environment where that person naturally rises in the direction, and then our job is to coach them and make them better, right? And people in an organization, particularly when it's growing, we tend to think that the only way to grow in an organization is up. That's not true. There's people who grow up from technical to becoming a manager to becoming a leader. Yes, that's the traditional way. But today, with people working longer, there's also people who are growing down. They're minimizing what they do, moving from a leadership to a manager, maybe to a technical, because they love what they do. They're excited about what they're doing and they're engaged. The third way to think about it, though, and this is one people miss so often, is that a lot of times the right path for somebody is not up and it's not down, it's driving depth. It's becoming a subject matter expert. We don't reward that nearly enough.
These are all the things I have to believe that the average person is not going to know unless somebody like yourself points it out.
So much of what I do is creating awareness. So much of what I do is creating awareness that we tend to create rules that we live by, right? Or rules in an organization. Unwritten rules are the worst ones that lead us to think only certain things are possible, only certain things are successful, and that's not true at all. And so I've spent a career challenging those rules, challenging the confirmation bias that we all have, including mine, to say, what brings out the best here? What is really the best path for this person? I can't do that if I don't know them.
And what we think is the best may not be the best for us. It's because we've been conditioned to think, yeah, I got to level up, got to level. That's a term now. That's a
Yeah.
big one. Level
Yeah.
up, level up.
Yeah.
Businesses are changing their names. Level up, level left, level right, level down. We don't think of
Yeah.
it that way. Um, do you also feel that many of us are afraid that somebody's going to take over our position? So we're always kind of protecting what we do, and that's why when we first got together it took a little bit for me to understand
Right.
playbook number 3,
Right.
that you share your playbook with everybody. Do
Yeah.
you think we're in that mindset of got to protect myself, got to make sure I'm not giving up the secret sauce to my life here and what I do and how I do it, and then sometimes we get pigeonholed and we don't really grow the way we should.
1,000%. I mean, we've talked earlier, right? Fear is the enemy,
Yeah,
right? If we have fear and we have trust, if we have fear and we have confidence, if we move to fear, we do things that are unpredictable, and we don't build others, but we don't build ourselves. So imagine for a moment if I'm holding one rope in my hand, right? One rope like you tie a ship. It fits pretty easy. I could put my arms around it, I'd probably come down like that. But now I add a rope, and now I add a rope, and now I add a rope. And pretty soon I'm like struggling to hold on to this great big circle of ropes, right? And then one drops, and then another drops, and then another drops.
mm,
And pretty soon we find we can't hold on to all those ropes if we want to take other ropes that allow us to grow, using it as this is sort of a visual picture, right?
sure.
And so if we constantly hang on to things, then people are going to constantly hang on to things that would help us to grow in whatever direction we might be going, up, down, or horizontal.
The visual I got there was that Tarzan in the jungle, where he grabs a rope, then he grabs the next rope, then the next
Mm-hmm.
rope. So I can see that if your hands are full holding this big, massive ball of rope, how can you even reach for the next one and then the next one?
Well, let's run with that analogy, right? That's a perfect, beautiful picture. It's a great word picture. Tarzan goes, he takes this rope, right, or this vine, and he's hanging on the vine, and he's going to the next one. And he gets to the next one, and now he holds on to both of them. What happens?
He
He
goes nowhere.
stops.
He stops. Right.
He stops, right? And
Mm,
and when we cover up in business, right, and I'm not talking
mm.
Pollyannish, you have to be wise and you have to think about where you're investing what we have to offer. But when we cover up, we stop. And when we stop, everybody stops because we create a culture that promotes that, right?
Wow.
And that's not uncommon. That's very common. And when organizations change, when I get involved with organizations, often when they change is when they have pain. When all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. They got big too fast. Maybe the economy shifted. Whatever happened, this doesn't work. And the most important secret, Steve, is it never did. It never did.
I got to process that for a second. So you're saying if somebody is turning around saying that that's not working anymore, most times it never was working.
So picture it this way. Um, as you grow, as an organization grows, right? Um, that creates a culture that promotes that and change, and a culture that promotes growth and succession and building people responds to a market that does the same, that demands that, right? In a competitive market, where your competitors are out there to put you out of business, right? And so if you're developing your people in a way that we're using these three playbooks, we're giving that playbook away, and there's growth or there's not growth, but there's a spirit of growth. There's also a nimbleness that meets the market where the market is, no matter what the market does.
Hmm.
And so if you're not doing that, it didn't work in the first place because you were just setting yourself up to get beat when you couldn't move to the market.
I have that picture of Tarzan again popping in my head,
Right.
and it is, I guess it's and this rings it true. The classic, you got to let go of one thing, i.e., a vine or a rope,
That's exactly right.
to grab the next one. And so many of us, there we go, fear of change. I don't want to let go of that rope because that one supported me, then. But there's a rope in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't grab that rope, you're not moving forward. But if you hold on to that previous rope, you're not moving forward either.
That's right. And
Hmm.
so the competitor behind you that knows how to do that is going to pass you by,
Yeah.
right? And so there's
That hurt by the way.
what was that?
Hearing those words, that competitor that knows how to do it is going to pass you by.
Yeah,
That's just a clear visual of the Tarzan analogy of them
yeah.
grabbing the ropes, letting the other one go, and there they go. Wow.
And Steve, the important thing to remember, there's nothing soft or Pollyannish about what we're talking about here. This is all about bringing your best self, getting your best organization and the right best culture so that wherever you happen to be in applying this, you defeat fear, right? You defeat fear and you grow in a way that's healthy. And when you grow in a way that's healthy, you're engaged, you're more productive, you're building on your strengths, and you're not worried about as much about holding on to something as you are about reaching to something better. That doesn't happen. We can't read a book, just like you and I are going through this conversation today. You can't read a book and say, "Oh, I got it. It's done. We're done." Right? And it doesn't matter who you're reading or what philosophy you're bringing into the discussion. We need to reinforce it with somebody who doesn't have confirmation bias, who doesn't have a horse in the race, but somebody who can walk you through the logical way of thinking of, well, wait a minute, let me challenge your thinking here, just like you did a few minutes ago. It's masterful, by the way. And it comes into relationship, and the relationship is how you defeat fear. And the relationship doesn't mean that you're telling somebody you can trust the outcome. More importantly, it means you're helping them to trust the journey.
Tell us about your coaching, the aspect of that, using these principles, the open playbooks, how you move somebody's life forward.
Well, the first thing is to meet them where they're at, right? And so we use Clifton Strengths a lot. I use Clifton Strengths. That's my cornerstone
Mm.
philosophy. But it does. You don't have to use Clifton Strengths. Strength-based leadership is about thinking about, when I look at that person, where do I see those strengths emerge? And those come from
Mm.
stories. They come from, what's their life story? When you take 5 minutes, what did they do on the weekend? Well, why do they do that? Get curious about people. Why do they do that thing? And then forming a dialogue and a relation. What do they have in their office, Steve? You look in their office, something that is there for a purpose. That tells you about that person. And that's how you start to getting curious about people and think about their strengths. So I start with curiosity. That's where I start every single time, whether it's with Clifton Strengths or whether it's without Clifton Strengths. It's like, what do I feel coming back from that person? And then ask questions. The Socratic method of questioning is one of the most powerful tools any of us ever have. And the Socratic method of questioning, in its simplest form, is saying, ask them questions that they can't answer with a yes or no. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then see where it goes.
Hmm.
The path will surprise you.
I love the fact that you go very deep with this in a fact finding mission to learn about somebody because
Mm-hmm.
every little thing, every little nuance tells you something about them. And Clifton Strengths, I think I shared with you, I did the assessment before we met and it was impactful. We'll be honest with you. I go back sometimes and try to analyze it. It's been a while and it gets too deep for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to just, I hire Larry, let him tell me what I need to know. Because it does. I don't, I find it interesting, but I'm not interested in the full depth of it. I just want to know my strengths, what I
Right.
need to do with them, the lower strengths. Is that an issue? But there's a story. You harness the power of somebody's story. There's a story in everything. Every right down, like you said, the tchotchke on the shelf in somebody's office tells you something about them. Probably ties into one of those 34 Clifton strengths as well.
Very, very likely. Who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Mm,
And and let me give you an example of how this might work, right? And
sure.
how it played out. This is a powerful example. I was with a client of mine 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember the exact date. I had about 50 people in the room, and we were going over the Clifton strengths. So I got people into small groups, and they select a leader. We have some fun doing it, get everybody laughing, right? And then the leader leads them through evaluation of their top 5 strengths and their bottom 5. So, anyways, the leader leads this, and I let each of the small groups do it. I make sure they're on track, and then after 20 minutes or so, I call them back, and I go to the leader and I say, well, tell me a little bit about your experience. Now, was one of the first times I'd worked with this company. I had 50 people in the room. The very first leader I call upon says, my number one's all wrong. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. It's absolutely wrong, and it doesn't work. And so now I have to respond to this in front of a group who is probably having similar, they're working through their stuff. And so I will tell me what your number one was. His number one was empathy. Before I could say another word, true story, before I could say another word, the 4 people around the table that were in his group said, that's what we go to you for. That's what we go to you for. And so when I'm developing a talent, which is really what we're measuring with Clifton Strengths, tells me his number one talent, he doesn't even know he has. What could he do if we invest in that with skills and knowledge? And now he's got his strength.
I know where you're going with that, because I think I revealed with in the beginning when we first started talking, out of the 34 Clifton strengths, my number 2 strength is empathy. And it blew me away. I knew it was probably 15, maybe top 10, maybe. Had no idea it was number 2. Can I share my top 5 and what you get from them? Because I haven't seen them in probably 6 months, and I just called them up.
Absolutely.
So number 1, communication, no brainer there.
Yep.
Empathy, that was a surprise. Responsibility, maximizer, and discipline. Those are my top 5. What do you pull from that?
Okay, well, so communication we've talked about, it kind of makes sense, and we've talked about empathy, right?
Sure.
So empathy is really being able to understand another person from their perspective and understand and act with their thoughts and consideration. That's a kind of a high level approach to it. And there's a lot more, but let's stick with that for the moment, because we've talked a little bit about empathy. And number 3 for you again was responsibility, right? So when I think about responsibility, this is what I think about. To me, and when I read through Clifton Strengths literature, what I think about in its purest terms is when you tell me you're going to do something, it's as good as done.
Yeah. I have to agree. I'm very responsible, sometimes to a fault.
Well, for sure. And so there's a lot more there, right? I mean, obviously, we're taking all of human behavior, we're putting in 34 of these talent themes, but that's a simple way to think about it. That's the way I think about it. If you tell me you're going to do something, it's done.
You're right.
It's done.
And just for everybody, we're just scraping the surface here. This runs way deeper. When you're working with somebody, you could spend one session on one of the strengths, one of the top 5 strengths. This is where it lost me. Maximizer. Not even sure what that is. I'd have to go back. Responsibility kind of gives you sort of an idea of somebody. I don't know what the maximizer is. What is that?
Well, let me share with you maximizer. Again, it's maximizer for me is 3. So it's very high in my 5. It's something I lean very hard into. And I had the same question. It's like, let me understand this. And so when I think about maximizer and reading through the literature, and I think about how it speaks to me, it's about competing not with the scoreboard, not with somebody else to see who has more points, but competing with perfection. That's my way of looking at maximizer. So as I think about doing something, I'm thinking past the scoreboard. How do I make this the maximum,
the best it can be?
The best it can be. Now, maximizer is interesting because sometimes, right, we want it the best it can be, but sometimes we don't need the best that we think it can be is past where someone else who we work for thinks it needs to be. And so that's how we show how to use the relationship thing and how to avoid what we call a blind spot, right? Because it may not be good enough for me, but it's good enough for what we're doing. And so I have to work with that and keep an eye out on that.
And I'll just tell you, That changed in my journey about 4 years ago because I was a perfectionist,
Hmm.
a maximizer, if you will, where it had to pass a certain level for me. Now I don't look at it that way. I have guidelines for myself, but if it's okay in the general theme of things, then I'm okay with it. Does that mean I settle? No, but I realize nothing is perfect.
Hmm.
Nothing, there's no way you can be perfect. And you know what? It's good. If you feel good about it, it's good. And then you
Yeah.
move on from it. But that was a game changer for me. Got to tell you,
Hmm.
Larry.
Hmm.
Since I was 17 years old, there's an article from a local library with my display of cartoons because I wanted to be a cartoonist when I
Hmm.
was 17 on the wall in that office right there, and it literally says my words to
Hmm.
the reporter. I'm a perfectionist at age
Yeah.
17, and I rode that train until just maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. And so it's a perfect illustration of how to use this and how we work on the coaching aspect of it, right?
Mm,
Because as we grow, we see that those top five, they can be really powerful for us, or they can take us in a place that maybe isn't as productive.
sure.
The difference is us learning how to use those.
Yep.
The difference is knowledge. The difference is wisdom. The difference is thinking it through. So yeah.
And
And that,
number five, discipline.
I mean, number five, discipline, typically kind of speaks for itself, is being disciplined in how you approach things like orderly things, and discipline for me is way down at 33. There you
Wow.
go. And so it's I tend to think of it as liking more order and less variability. That's the way I think about it. And what I would do with somebody is we go into the whole definition. We say, okay, what are these pieces, and how do they speak to you? Not are they right or wrong? How do they speak to you? Right?
Mm.
And because my job isn't to convince anybody that it's right or wrong, we're creating awareness and then a path.
Competitive or competitiveness was like number 33 for me, low on the
Mm-hmm.
list. And when I saw that, I was concerned, like, oh, I'm not competitive. Wow, what is that about? But for those of us that don't know how this works, we're not going to see it in the same way. You're going to bring something else to light in seeing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think competition's a good one. It's low for me too, right?
Hmm.
And I football, baseball, but mainly football. You're in a competitive environment. But I look at competition and maximize are pretty close together. One looks at the scoreboard, one looks at perfection. They're still going to the same place. I think Maximizer goes a step further because it's past the scoreboard. In fact, I'll go back to a quote we talked about in very first session, I think.
Hmm.
This is what Vince Lombardi talked about. He talked about winning is not a sometimes thing. It's an all the time thing. You don't win once in a while. You don't do things right once in a while. You do them right all the time. Winning is a habit. Unfortunately, so is losing. That's Vince Lombardi. That's to me Maximizer.
Hmm.
He doesn't say one
Wow.
word about the scoreboard. He says about all the things that we do that translate into the outcome on the scoreboard. He doesn't talk
Hmm.
about the scoreboard. Competition would look at the scoreboard.
True. True. And I would wonder what is the definition of winning? So when we look at that, let's say we lost something. Yeah, let's say you lost an account, whatever it is. You actually won because you realized something, and that will move you forward the next time. Or maybe that puts
Mm-hmm.
some fuel under your butt to push forward because of it. You're seeing the opportunity. So maybe that's a win. It wasn't a win in the traditional sense of, competitiveness looking at the scoreboard, but there was a win involved.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I'll tell you, I have a simple answer for how I look at it. I win until I quit, and I'm not quitting.
Yeah, same.
So I'm going to get an outcome. And when we remember we talked about progress, it's not like that linear path that goes like this. It's setbacks and breakthroughs.
Sure.
And so from a coaching perspective, I'm looking for those points. I'm looking for those moments. And I don't care when they happen. They could happen at midnight, 2 in the morning. If I get a call and we're working on something that's in that moment, that's when you work. It's setbacks and breakthroughs, right? And so the scoreboard is just a scoreboard. It's capitalizing on those setbacks and
Hmm.
breakthroughs so that we drive the best process, we drive the best result through process, and not result in spite of lack of process, if that makes sense.
It reminds me at the gym, and I think it's a quote from The Rock, and it says, "The worst workout is the one that didn't take place."
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. 1,000% right.
Larry, always great talking with you. Best way to reach you is it open-playbook.com?
Yeah, open-playbook.com, and then OpenPlaybook LLC at gmail.com.
You bring to light perspective that is not garnered anywhere else. I've been sitting on those strengths for months. And I'd go online, I'd read. I have the book. I bought the book, $49. It's sitting in my nightstand. The other day I brought it, taking a look, like, I can't do this. This is just, I need somebody like you to explain it and apply it. And that's what you and your methodology and the playbooks do. And for that, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here today.
Steve, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Enjoy your trip, by the way.
I'll do it. It's going to be a busy one,
Awesome.
but we'll do it.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
We'll catch up next time. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.